Welcome to Uncluttered and Unfiltered, the podcast urging you to let it go and don't look back. With nationally acclaimed professional organizer Christine Stone and self-proclaimed hot damn mess radio and TV personality Eden Kendall.
Ooh, it is a special Halloween bonus edition of Uncluttered and Unfiltered.
So excited. I can die a happy woman.
This actually could be your birthday edition.
I mean, this is so exciting for me.
So I have a couple of Christines in my life, and I've got Christine Stone, neatly designed organizer. And then there's Coach Christine Hetzel, who has the most unique podcast, I think,
very
out there.
Unique.
And what it is, and you see her now, there she is. Hello, my dear. Hi.
Hello, Eden. Hello, Christine. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I have to be honest, as I was doing my makeup and listening to your recent episode, I was like, I'm doing it all wrong.
You know what? Isn't that the beauty about podcasts, though? But let me give you a little bit of background on my end. And parts of this, or most of this, you're going to be able to hear on either of the two podcasts, our Uncluttered and Unfiltered, and on Running Scared. But let me give you a little bit of a background on how I know Christine Hetzel. So there was an app called Charge Running, which was like the most fun thing ever. And there was live coaching. And you would put on your earbuds and you'd go for a run and you would actually be live and there'd be a coach at a microphone, probably looking kind of like the way I'm looking, like Christine's looking right now. And she, by the way, I'm going to call you Christine Stone, and you Christine, because otherwise I'm going to call you Murder Christine and you Neat Christine. And I don't think that's good. So anyway, she would be the coach in my ear, and she's so uplifting and upbeat and sparkly, but then she's got this dark side, right? So she loves true crime.
Oh, I heard her podcast. I loved it.
So what she has now done is combine the running coaching with the true crime.
Love it.
So when you're out for a run, you get to hear these stories. And in the meantime, she'll be like, all right, let's take it down to a walk. And then the bloody knife.
And the most awkward position, be like, well, and then they discovered a bunch of bodies. Now we're just going to chill a little bit for a walk or bump up the pace. But yeah, it has definitely been a quite interesting marriage of the two loves. There's no doubt on that. I myself listen to a lot of true crime when I go out for a run. So it felt very natural of a progression for me. So I enjoy every aspect of the spookiness. And I assume, Chris, that you are not just a true crime fan. If you love Halloween, you're just a spooky fan all the way around.
Crime fanatic. I mean, I can't tell you. My husband said this morning, you must be just giddy. I have watched every true crime. I videotaped Dateline 48 Hours in 2020 so I could skip through the commercials. And I am fascinated by the fascination of true crime. I mean, everybody is talking about the Dahmer documentary or, made for Netflix show and the other one, the documentary. So I am fascinated by why people are so fascinated. And I've come to the conclusion in my mind, it's because you never think this could happen to you. So you're kind of just looking through someone else's eyes or what's going on in someone else's life.
Is that what you think? Is that what the fascination is?
So that's fascinating. Actually, there's a lot of research about it because, as you mentioned, there's been tons of emphasis on true crime from specifically podcasting world. If you think back to what really propelled podcasting to what it is today, for me, it's hands down Serial. Serial just kind of came onto the scene and just blew the lid off of investigative journalism, podcasting. It felt very intimate, and you kind of were taken on this journey the entire time that you absolutely loved. So from that, it's just grown and grown in this audio form, which I love. But the research indicates that women are the primary audience for true crime by and large. And I don't know about you guys, but the fellows just don't get it. Like, they just don't understand why we're so riveted by it.
The room more times and said, how many of these can you watch where either he killed her or she killed him? How many times? And I'm like, it's to me, and I've heard this before on other podcasts, it's kind of relaxing. It's like I come home and I hear, Keith Morrison, Josh Mankiewicz, whoever it is, and I'm like, ugh. And I literally, it puts me to sleep. And I've heard so many other women say the same thing. It's like a sedative. It's unbelievable.
You're absolutely right. I can't tell you how often I will fall asleep when I'm researching my cases, just because it is very
Eden.
relaxing to me. So the research indicates, by the way, everyone, my friends, if you end up seeing this on the YouTube channel of Uncluttered and Unfiltered, you'll get to see that Eden may not be
Right.
quite as big of a fan as the Chris
Okay,
and
so I'll be
Christine
honest
are
with
here.
you. The only true crime I listen to is Running Scared, because I love you and I love to hear your voice when I run. And so you could read me the phone book and I'd be perfectly happy with it. But as far as no, it's not my way of relaxing and unwinding at all. At all. In fact, my Chris, just said to me, just in passing, why does everybody want to put antifreeze in Gatorade? And I was like, who wants to put antifreeze
She
in
goes,
Gatorade?
who? I go,
Everyone.
it's undetectable. You can't taste it. She goes, how do you know that? I go, I listen to all these shows.
Did you know that, Christine? Coach Christine?
So I have come across that a little bit myself, but I think Christine or Chris, you may have the phone book. We're calling you girlfriend if we ever need to dispose a body, because you seem to have a lot of information
I'm married to a criminal
there.
defense lawyer, and I'll say, if you spray luminol, it'll come up. The blood will show. It'll be like lightning in a room. And he's like, how did you know that? And I'm like, oh,
Can't
like
kill
my
him. You
homework.
wouldn't have a lawyer.
Right.
Right. I've been preparing. So I think you specifically nailed it as to why people are so attracted to it. It is because it does help to kind of peel back the unknown and the fear that we may have around certain things. And once you get to know that fear, it's kind of like tackling any fear that you may have, be it heights or, scary, creepy things at a haunted house. It helps to maybe put a face to the fear so you're not quite as frightened. It is definitely one of the theories as to why people are so fascinated by true crime. I personally love the psyche. Like, what happened? I keep thinking this was somebody who literally needed a professional organizer in their life because they had too much damn clutter everywhere, and they just needed, and they were so frustrated that they possibly they were driven to maybe act out those murderous urges that, I don't know about you guys. I definitely can have
what
when
I'm
looking
hearing
through my
you say is
makeup drawer.
a well-timed trip to IKEA could save a life.
Yeah.
If they would only have organized their.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I also
I'm
think
pretty
as a
positive.
mother of daughters, I mean, I don't know about if you have daughters, but I am constantly texting them, oh my gosh, don't do this, don't do that. If you're ever locked in a trunk, you need to do this. I mean, constantly, because I'm learning from these things. Always have your Find My iPhone so I can find you. I mean, to me, it's like a learning lesson to give your children, because I love them, but they're so naive because they're so young and they don't think anything bad could ever happen to them. So I'm always like, last night on Dateline, this girl, she was walking alone. Never walk alone. You know what I mean?
Yes. So what's your?
Yeah, that's actually another one of the things as well, as people want to know like what they should do, learn a little bit more about it. I actually end up most of my podcast episodes with lessons that I take away from that particular story. Usually I do it a little tongue in cheek
You also
to lighten it up, but
with safety tips. You do start out. So for those who have not yet had an opportunity to listen to Running Scared, and of course we'll have the link in show notes, and we encourage everybody to listen. And even if you're walking on a treadmill or just cleaning the house, it's just really fun stuff. I say it's fun stuff. I enjoy a good Black Widow story as much as the next gal. But what are some of the tips you give, though, as far as if you're heading out by yourself for a walk or a run?
Well, first and foremost, the number one thing that I think everyone should take into account, very much what you just said, Chris, is that you should have a way for somebody to track you, someone that you love, that you hold dear, that knows you, and they should be able to know where you're heading or when to expect you back. That's like the number one thing that I say. So please, friends, if you're listening in, put that into your everyday practice. Now, Eden, for you and I, where we tend to go for a run with a GPS watch, we have all sorts of additional technologies for those purposes to assist. So if you aren't familiar with it and you are an avid outdoor exerciser, please do look into maybe all of the technology, those wearables that you have as a way to keep yourself a little safer. But you could always go old school, where you just let somebody know where you're going to go and what time
And I
you
also
should be
think
back.
not just murderous crime podcasts or TV shows, but like the Sherry Papini case where it was a mother who faked her own kidnapping. I also find that people find those stories fascinating because you're like, who would do that? And so you can't get enough of that, like a story like that where someone fakes it and thinks they can get away with it with the police or whoever. So I think there's so many different variations of true crime that people are fascinated with.
What's been your favorite?
In so many different aspects. Oh, goodness, Eden, without a doubt, I love me some lady killers. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but just as you mentioned, Chris, I cannot resist. I'll just go down the rabbit hole and I'm like, but why and how? And how did they get another guy to date them? I know some incredible women who can't seem to find dates. And clearly, if you just like go a little kooky and kill a few guys, that's all you need to get a call back.
I know you have. I don't know what's been keeping you apart. So,
and speaking of rabbit holes, though, that's the funniest thing. It used to be where you'd watch like a Dateline, but now you'll watch the Dateline, then go on to the podcast and listen to the same thing you just watched. And you feel like you're going down a rabbit hole. Like, how many different ways can I hear, she kill, he kill, you know what I mean? But you do it, you love it. You go from one to the other. So it's fascinating.
Now, I did love Serial, the Adnan case. I did love that. And I'm still reeling over the fact that he's out. But you know what? The thing that was the biggest takeaway, and I've shared this over and over again, because I feel like it's the most true thing ever, especially with a memory like mine. If you ask somebody what they did 3 weeks ago, if they can take you through their entire day, they committed a murder on that day, because most people can't remember yesterday, let alone 3 weeks ago. Well, at 2:00, I left the library. I did this. Not unless they were burying a body in the middle of all of that.
Right.
They don't remember the day. And so I was like, when I was listening to that, I was like, this truly is a great lesson in psychology.
And also there are cameras everywhere. And people just seem to forget that. Like, they just forget that there's cameras coming out of the grocery store. There's camera. And then they get them in there and they go, we got you on camera. And it's like, oops, I mean, it's like silly things. You know what I mean, Christine?
That's what I think is fascinating, is that we're finding is that you're not going to hear as much of those true crime cases where they're as unsolved as they were in the past. Kind of like Adnan may have been one of those last final things where it is kind of hard to extricate a lot of details. Because nowadays, like you said, you can't really go out your front door you can't go out, I think, into another room without your echo knowing where you're at or anything of that sort. So technology has definitely helped in that barrier or that obstacle that I think that police may have had or investigators may have had. I'm curious though, because clearly you do know your stuff. Who is your favorite obsession recently?
I would have to say it's the Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix show. And I also have already watched Conversations with Jeffrey Dahmer where he tells us. And, everyone's really upset about it. They're like, you shouldn't be glamorizing. I don't feel it was glamorizing. What I took away from the whole entire thing is that he could have been stopped so much sooner, but nobody took the people seriously that were telling the police. Of course, it was a different generation, a different time, but that's the whole thing I took away. And also, when you have kids, they don't remember the Ted Bundys. They don't, because they weren't young then. And I think these are things that should never be forgotten in my mind. I mean, I really don't. I think you learn lessons from each of these tragedies for yourself, for your children, and also just it's history, in my opinion.
I felt that way about the Ted Bundy.
I
haven't seen the Dahmer yet. But what I was going to say was when Zac Efron played Ted Bundy, people were very upset that they would have somebody so gorgeous and charismatic. But that's what I did like about it, because I thought, and I only saw parts of it, to be honest. But what I did like about it was that, like, my daughter, for example, could see that there could be someone, like, it's very hard to say no to somebody who looks like that and acts like that and is so charismatic. And not every mass murderer is going to be disgusting.
Right.
And, just to show you that you can be taken in by somebody
so
easily.
Right. And I have also
I have yet to find someone who's actually overtly scary. Like for the most part, look like regular humans. So, I mean, I say that weird. Regular humans, but they don't have murderous rages. So, yeah, there's
Well,
no doubt about that.
I mean, you teach your kids to be polite, right? You're like, be polite if a stranger but in these instances, you learn when someone comes up to you and they have a broken arm and they want help do not do that. I mean, you don't have to be polite. I've taught my own kids this. Use that inner self in here. Listen to what your insides tell you. If you feel like I really shouldn't be doing this, don't do it just to be polite.
I think you just nailed something why I feel women gravitate towards this genre more so than ever. We have very good instincts for the most part, and yet we tend to, because it was something we were raised with, of being proper and sweet and kind and very, very polite, that we tend to kind of put that aside because we don't want to be perceived as a mean person or a mean girl or someone who would shun anyone. And unfortunately, that's just not always the most appropriate way of staying alive.
That is
today's
true.
day and age.
That is true. What has been the response to you, Christine? Coach Christine, I'll call you. What has been the response that you've gotten from people that are not true crime aficionados, not the enthusiasts? And I'm going to guess that there has to be a couple of dudes out there too who are like, I'm sorry, what now?
Yeah, I can't think of any guys.
Oh, to say, yay, I love it. Yeah.
Cool. No, not one. So clearly I'm not going to have a really big testosterone heavy fan club. And that's okay because I have found my people. So it's anybody who wants to talk about this. I tend to find folks that aren't necessarily big true crime fans. As you've politely noticed, Eden, I don't get into the graphic details. I keep it a little lighter. I'm very cognizant that most people that are doing this, if they're running outside, it can be a little scary enough on its own. So I try to keep it a little lighter, which is probably another reason why I've gravitated so much to the Mistresses of Murder and Mayhem that I love right now that's going on. Because it's not
I do enjoy
the
delight sometimes that you'll express, and it'll be over something. So, just what would drive this person, or you'll call her like Miss Thing. Well, little Miss so-and-so just couldn't let that go by without taking it into her own hands. And it's just fun.
Well, it reminds me of the one case where it's like she starts to decorate her home. She's nesting, which is really normal, right? We get married in a new relationship, you start nesting, but she's nesting and she's decorating her home with like animal fur trappings and like skulls of dead animals or her blades, because she was very proud of her butcher knives. She displayed them proudly over the bed. I mean,
so when she skinned him.
Yeah, exactly. Are we not surprised? Like she was literally advertising what was to come. I'm just thinking, where did we not think about the red flags there?
I also think, because I was listening to yours on the Lizzie Borden, this goes back, forever, where people still talk about Lizzie Borden, and it doesn't matter how long ago it was. It kind of gets new life every now and then. I don't know if it's DNA, something happens where they think they've cracked some code, but I think this has been going on forever. It's just now we have Netflix.
Right.
And we have podcasts. So I think this has been going on for a really long time, the fascination with why people do the things they do.
You nailed it, because on the Lizzie Borden case, what kind of came to mind for me specifically was after that murder happened, the throngs of people that actually surrounded the Lizzie Borden home was so much so that people couldn't get in or out. The police had to kind of help to try to like navigate and push back the crowds. And that's not something that you think about when you think of like a historical murder. You kind of see it as stodgy or boring or very black, white, and sepia toned. But it was just as captivating to people
look at the
back
fact
then
that
as
there's
it is to us today.
that silly song, Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. And that speaks to the fact that people were finding the humor, even though there could not be anything less funny than this girl doing what she did. But people, I guess maybe it's a coping mechanism, but that's basically what happened. People were delighted and wanted to sing about it or just use it as a scary story. Right.
I think it was a nursery rhyme, like it was like a jump rope kind of thing, which is very disturbing.
So disturbing.
It absolutely is. I think we do have a tendency to kind of deal with the macabre by adding a little bit of levity to it, or at least that's definitely how I deal with it. So I think that's an interesting, I personally changed up that little nursery rhyme. If you listen to my Lizzie Borden case, I finished it with what I feel should be a nursery rhyme that we move forward with from this day and age, now that we know more details about the fact that
she was acquitted.
So we don't really know if she did.
And
or
I
did
have
not
to ask
do it.
you,
So,
being the true crime person, did you feel validated when Saturday Night Live did their parody of true crime? For all of us true crimers out there, I felt like, God, they know me so well.
Are you familiar with that?
it is uncanny.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't actually seen it, but I was going to say it's uncanny how many people do know me, I feel like, and they do understand that. I see all of like the merchandise where it's like, don't interrupt me, I'm listening to my true crime podcast, which is pretty much true. Like, I don't want to be interrupted when I have my headphones in because I am really into the case, or the fact that I fall asleep. I think there's one that kind of cracks me up, and it says something to the effect of glass of wine in bed by 9 after watching my murder shows or something like that. It's like, that's pretty much me. Did you just come to my house and see what I do every night?
Do you remember your Lizzie Borden nursery rhyme, by the way? I'd love to hear how you finished it. I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh my goodness. Well, it had to do with her legal team. She had what did a fellow podcaster, or a podcast that I would aspire to be like, it said to the fact that she had the dream team before we know of the dream team, like the original. Yeah. So her legal team was absolutely stellar. They were able to get evidence dismissed from the case in a way that really could be said that helped her be acquitted within an hour and a half. So I don't know on uncluttered and unfiltered how unfiltered we're allowed to get. Okay. But I basically said something to the effect of, if your legal team is the shit, then your jury will acquit, because that's essentially what happened to her. It kind of, as I'm listening to this, it reminded me of, again, another true crime case, I guess you could say to this day, O.J. Simpson.
I remember. Do you guys not still remember where you were
when the Bronco was driving 5 miles? Same here. Or watching every single time you could for that case.
I had a newborn baby, so I had all the time in the world. And I would rock and listen to the Dream Team and OJ and Marsha Clark do their thing. And yes, I remember every bit of it. There are just some things about true crime or crime in general, you just don't forget.
It's amazing. And also amazing to me is when you get the behind the scenes on the strategies like that the attorneys will use, or the interrogators. I love a good, now this is where we're different. So you love the whole true crime phenomenon. I love a good interrogation. I can go down the rabbit hole on like the methods where they'll say to the husband, so if we catch this guy, what should we do to him? And then they use that against him when they finally prove him guilty. Well, you yourself said that we should string you up, So I love the interrogation part of it. But look at this. So we set out to talk with you, chat with you 10, 15 minutes, and now we're about 23 minutes in. And I could do this all day, listen to the two of you go back and forth. Perfect murder weapon, Christine? Coach Christine, what's the perfect murder weapon?
Oh my goodness. Well, now I'm hearing about this new phenomenon of antifreeze and Gatorade. So I'm assuming that would be it.
The Lovely Bones, and they said it was an icicle because it would melt.
And the new thing is eye drops. They are lethal if you put them in coffee or food, or lethal. I had no idea.
I had heard that a long time ago. I know that usually it makes you very ill. Your body will reject it, but I didn't know that it would actually potentially put you under
big a damage.
I feel like maybe a disclaimer. You should say, listen, don't do these things.
Oh, don't do any of these things.
Don't do murder. Don't do it. Obviously, don't do it. But delight in it when you're exercising and making yourself stronger and healthier with running scared. We'll have in our show notes a couple of things. We'll have the Running Scared podcast in our show notes, of course. And we will have that Saturday Night Live skit in our show notes, the link to that, so you can watch that. What else can we tell everybody about you, Christine? What can we tell our listeners?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, again, thank you so much. I think you can basically take away that I am definitely down for a true crime conversation at any time. So if friends wanted to come join over in the Facebook community page with Running Scared with Coach Christine, you could talk to all of your fellow true crime enthusiasts because, well, it just never ends. The conversation always is possible to open up another door or another theory.
Our friend, Coach Christine Hetzel, Running Scared podcast. Well, let us give you our goodbye. We would love for you to be able to let it go.
And don't look back.